The words for sale, continuation. From then on, Rich was a rising star of Philip Brothers, posted around the world to secure business or resolve problems. He is the surname Rich. He spent, just a second, 6 months in Bolivia. He flew into Cuba in the wake of the revolution to negotiate with the new government of Fidel Castro. He had spells in South Africa, India, and the Netherlands. In 1964, at the age of 30, he was appointed office manager in Madrid, firmly establishing him as one of the company's next generation of leaders. Rich could turn on the charm when he needed to, but he had few close friends. One mining executive who dined with him remembers his being pleasant but cold. And while he inspired huge loyalty from many of his employees, none doubted where Rich's priorities lay. His business and his hobbies were on and the same. It's just work, says Danny Posen, who recalls as a junior employee waiting late into the evening outside Rich's limousine, only to find him still inside surrounded by the day's telexes and deep in debate about the business. That single-minded extended into his personal relationships, even when he was being warm and generous. It was hard to escape the feeling that he was trying to gain some information or advantage from the other person. Roque Benavides, whose family owns a mining business in Peru, recalls dining at Rich's house. He was a great host. The wine flowed freely, and Benavides returned to his hotel absolutely drunk. But Rich also got what he wanted from the encounter, a 10-year contract to buy from Benavides mines. Rich had not been the first trader at Philip Brothers to deal in oil. That honor fell to Alan Flex, the head of the company's Milan office, who had got wind of a 25,000-ton cargo of oil that might be for sale when visiting clients in Tunisia in 1969. Flex, a metals trader from Manchester, knew little about oil. Neither did anyone else at Philip Brothers, but he figured it couldn't be so different to trading metals. He made some calls and found a refiner willing to buy the cargo. After a few days of talks, he agreed a price with the Tunisians, then immediately sold it on for a little bit more, and the deal was effectively riskless, and Philip Brothers ended up making about 65,000 from the operation, a tidy sum at the time. It was a back-to-back deal, very safe because there was no storage involved, and the money was right up front. But Rich's natural aggression and raw enthusiasm for the new commodity meant that he soon supplanted Flex as the company's principal oil trader. I was working in a commodities trading house, and the oligopoly of the Seven Sisters was coming to a halt. Suddenly, the world needed a new system of bringing the oil from the producing countries to the consuming countries, so that's exactly what I did, he told his biographer a few years before his death in 2013. I just thought it should be possible to trade oil despite the Seven Sisters. The key to his early success was the Eilat Ascleton pipeline in Iran, between Iran and Israel. Trade through the pipeline was shrouded in secrecy. At the Iranian end of the trade, tankers would load oil from Iran in the Persian Gulf, and the crew would tell port authorities that they were heading to Gibraltar for orders, but the tankers would never appear in Gibraltar. Instead, they should sail in secret to Eilat, unload their oil, and reappear empty in Iran. Anyone watching could only guess where they might have offloaded their cargo. The Sunday Times, which published an account of the trade in 1970, called it the mystery of the disappearing tankers. The Israeli end of the business was equally secretive. The Israeli government imposed a complete blackout on reporting information about any vessel picking up crude at its port to supply European customers, effectively keeping the whole flow in the shadows. Rich couldn't have pulled off the trade without a colleague who would become his lifelong collaborator. Pink was green. Green, known as Pinky, had cut his teeth trading chrome, a metal used in stainless steel alloys, a combination of metals. Back in 1968, Iran was the world's 8th largest producer of chrome. So Green traveled back and forth to Tehran to negotiate deals, while Green brought the Iranian contacts and the mastery of shipping that earned him the nickname the Admiral. Rich had the swashbuckling edge needed to find a way to get the barrels onto the market. The pipeline was there. I decided that it was attractive, he said. People were reluctant to use the pipeline because the oil had passed through Israel. But Rich didn't hesitate. He exploited the pipeline with gusto, great enjoyment and energy, using it to sell Iran oil all over Europe. With Philip Brothers standing between them and the politically sensitive pipeline, the buyers of oil couldn't turn down the chance for a bargain. There was a big price advantage. Rich said the transport of Iranian crude through the pipeline was much cheaper than going all the way around Africa. The landlord at the Shah was referred to by the Israelis and was delighted. The 254 kilometers of pipeline saved roughly 22,000 kilometers circumnavigating Africa, making Iranian oil far more cost competitive than any of its rivals in the Mediterranean. The oil started to flow in December 1969, and the following years 162 tankers unloaded nearly 75 million barrels into the pipeline, about 200,000 barrels a day. Inside Philip Brothers, however, the Israeli pipeline was seen as a risk. Rich received such an dressing down from the company's bosses for not ensuring the oil shipped through the pipeline that he worried he might be fired. But the reprimand didn't slow him down. Over the years, first for Philip Brothers and later for his own company, he shipped between 60 and 75 million barrels per year of Iranian oil via the Eilat Ashkelon pipeline. It was, in his words, a very, very important business. Rich couldn't have got his start in oil trading at a better time. From 1960 to 1970, in spite of growing challenge posed by the independent oil traders, the Seven Sisters had largely kept control of the market. Oil prices had barely moved. Arab Light, the benchmark for Middle Eastern crude, started in 1960 at 1.9 per barrel dollars, and the end of the decade at $1.76, a decline prompted by the rising Soviet exports shepherded on the market by Weisser and others. But by the beginning of the 1970s, the trend had reversed and oil prices were on the rise. A crisis was brewing in the oil market. Its ingredients were then there for anyone else to see. Few paid much attention. In 1971, US President Richard Nixon dropped the gold standard, which until then had underpinned the value of the US dollar. His motives had little to do with oil and more to do with trying to support the US economy. But the impact of the oil-gas market was dramatic. As the American currency lost value, the earnings of Middle Eastern countries, which sold their oil in dollars, were also devalued. Within OPEC nations, it sparked new calls for governments to seize control of their natural resources from Western companies. From Algeria to Iraq, producers demanded a greater share of the earnings from their oil-producing industries, which had until then been largely controlled by the Seven Sisters. Soon their demands were so strident that they amounted to full-blown nationalization. Saudi Arabia, which had long resisted the trend, began agitating for the stake in the vast reservoir of oil controlled by American companies. Through Aramco, country by country, the vice-life grip of the Seven Sisters on the global oil market was being broken. So see you next time, next video. Bye bye.